So let me start by saying who I am. My name is Jessica Pfund. I work for the Google Earth team in Mountain View, working on data production, mostly with the vector stuff, so the data that's not imagery. We'll get into that a little bit. And basically, because I've been working with this data, with Google Earth data for about a year now, I've had a lot of time to just play around with Google Earth, which is fantastic. I can't believe you guys pay me to do this. And so I've noticed that there are a lot of really, really fascinating things that you can do with Google Earth that most people don't realize from just opening it up. I've had people that say, oh, I love Google Earth. And then I ask them what they've done with it, and they say, oh, I saw my house. It was the coolest thing ever. And I'm like, have you tried anything else? And they say, oh, no, but my house was really cool. And it is. Their house is very cool in Google Earth, but they're only scratching the surface of what this program can do. So we're going to talk about how Google Earth is fun, but also about how Google Earth can be used as a tool and maybe some of more advanced uses of Google Earth. So there's a lot to talk about. I mean, I've been kind of exploring this program for a year, so I can go into way too much detail, or maybe I'm going way too fast for you. So if anything is, if it's too advanced or too slow, just raise your hand, ask questions. Feel free to interrupt me. So let's start with just some of the basics. Basically, Google Earth is slightly different than Google Maps. Maybe I can throw Google Maps up here. Google Maps is a 2D flat map of the world, and Google Earth is a 3-dimensional view of the world. So it's not just flat, it actually has terrain, you can see mountains and things. And so maybe we can just zoom you in to one of my favorite places to go to show terrain, which is the Grand Canyon. I've been there before, and it's almost more fun on Google Earth because you get this bird's eye view of the Earth. And so you can see that there's actually down here in the layers, and we'll talk a bit more about the layers. The layers is actually what I do specifically with data production, and all too often gets overlooked. There's actually a terrain button here, and you can turn it off. So you get the flat world, loads a little faster, or you can actually have the terrain. You can zoom around here a little bit more. So you actually see. What's neat is you have so much more control with Google Earth than you do with Maps, Google Maps. Google Maps is north-facing. You can't turn on and off any of the layers, which is really great because you just want a simple view, some driving directions, you're set. But with Google Earth, you can change the way that you notice actually now that we're not looking north. So this is the navigation panel over here. So you can actually see that north is over sort of diagonally to the upper right-hand corner. And we can actually take this and move it around. And so you get sort of 360-degree view of the world. You can move either by clicking these, holding them down. You can move with left and right buttons on the keyboard. You can move with the mouse, click and drag. Then you can also zoom in. Oops. You can do this by double-clicking as well. It zooms you in. Actually, double right-clicking zooms you out. I was so excited when I first found this. Made things a lot faster. And actually, if you double-click on the zoom button here, it zooms you all the way in. It's kind of really fun to zoom yourself all the way out. Oh, I should stop. So you just click, it'll stop zooming. So let's zoom out and click. And then, in addition with the terrain, you can go completely flat, right? Which is like this. This is this panel over here, the top one. Or you can go completely bird's eye view, completely up. So that's just sort of the navigation panel here. Let's zoom ourselves out a little bit more. And I like hitting N, gets you back north, kind of recenters you. I use that one a lot. So then there are also these panels over to the left, and this toolbar you notice up here. And so the first panel is just the fly to. It's sort of, we see Google Earth as sort of a geo browser, just like Firefox or Internet Explorer. We see this as the way you search your world. So, for instance, we can write Paris, and it'll fly us to Paris. For some of the smaller towns, if it's a Springfield, Kansas, you have to write Springfield, Kansas, because otherwise it won't know which one it is. But typically it's pretty good. So you can see there's Paris there. If you want to do, you can also do in search, you can look for businesses. So for instance, if I wanted to go to Paris, I could write hotels, and it actually finds some hotels for me. Wanted to zoom out to show all of Paris, but and this is actually some of those businesses we also show in the layers. So you should see over here, down here we actually have hotels, lodging. So you can turn on lodging, you can see everything here. And actually, if you zoom out, the names will go away, so they're not quite as bad.
Search as the local search for businesses?
It should be, yeah. I mean, the nice thing is that with local search, you can search anything. We don't have maybe ice cream stores as a layer in the layers, but you can search for that in businesses. We just but it's kind of nice to see all of the hotels all at once rather than, the local search tries to give you a small subset, so it doesn't bombard you with all of this.
So does it use the same index? Is it
Yeah, it should be the same ones. And it's pretty neat. You can click on them, and it gives you the phone number, the address. It'll click you over to this internal browser. I like to make it small because sometimes it gets in the way. Oops.
That brought up an actual browser panel?
Yeah. Oops. Maybe they'll try this one. Yeah. So this actually finds this place on Google Maps. And you can actually, you can bring this out, you can pop this out. Let's see, here. So you can see, this is actually, we pop you over to Google Maps. And so it has
all the stuff Google Maps has.
Exactly. So it just links you over there a little faster. So because we see Google Earth as a geo browser, we like to hop you in and out of the internet as much as possible. You'll actually see that in our populated places down here. If you click on a populated place, a lot of people don't notice that in addition to directions to here, which happens with a lot of the pop-ups, we put in search web, images, and news. And so we could search images of Paris, right, on Google Images. And so you'll get the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre and all these Arc de Triomphe and all these things, which is pretty neat when you go to some place a little bit more foreign that you don't necessarily know. News is kind of neat too. So we like to hop you in and out. And one more thing that you can do with the search is you can do directions, just like with Google Maps. Looks the same. Let's see. So one thing I really like to know as well about these panels is you can make them disappear, which is great. So if you want some more real estate, you can close them like this. So you can see everything, and sometimes it gets a little, things get a little lost. And you can get rid of it completely by going hide sidebar. So it's just it gives you this beautiful screen. This is something new that we've been doing with the Google Earth 4. This is still the beta version. So actually, I should talk about places and layers. And so the layers are streamed from the Google databases. You need internet to see them. Or if you've gone on the internet, seen some of them, it'll load it in your cache. So you can work a little bit without internet, but it doesn't load too much on your cache. So it does help to have internet connection. So yeah.
Is there any way to preload those interesting to you.
Yeah, it is a very narrow amount. Like they don't let you download too much, cache too much, because we don't want people scraping our data, right? We don't want our imagery providers to be complaining that people are trying to steal their imagery, right? And so we let you cache a bit of it, but not a very large amount. But for instance, just like sometimes I do this. I'm driving somewhere. I'll turn on the roads, and just let them cache. I'll do this with Google Maps too sometimes. But Google Earth is great because we'll actually get into a few things. You can kind of add what you want. So you can, for instance, you can cache this, and then you can go drive, and then you have it on your laptop, and then I just sort of tell my boyfriend, oh, take a right at the next light, so we get to where we're going. We did this too for when we tried to find a new place to live, and we'll show. Actually, I should go into one of the really great things about Google Earth. One thing that's besides the terrain that makes it a little bit different than Google Maps and other maps programs out there is that you can actually make your own maps. So the differences between the layers and the section of places is that the layers is something that comes with every Google Earth. It gets streamed, so you don't have to download a new version of Google Earth. We just change our data on our end, and you see something else. And we're constantly updating our imagery and our data, our vector data, our layers. So you should always go on. You'll find something new. But in places, you can actually make your own maps. And people ask me, oh, but can anybody see this? It's just you can kind of think of it as you're writing a Word document in Word. Nobody can see it, but you can share it with other people. So we should make a map. Let me close what I have here. So what's really neat is, so you can right-click and you get all these options, or you can just go up to this panel. So just clicking this little push pin actually lets you make a place mark. So you can click here, you can push it, you can write Paris. You can change the icon. You can actually make your own icons. They just have to be, I think, 32 by 32 pixels, or maybe it even just, I think now it just resizes it for you. So for instance, I can put a little camera, let's say if this is where I went on vacation and I want to show my family or friends, this is what I did. All right, okay. And what's really neat is that this pop-up bubble here, you can actually write a description so that when you click on it, just like how we clicked on Paris, it had this pop-up bubble with some information. This actually takes HTML. So I can do an image source and actually link it to a photo. So let's see. Let's go to view image. So putting in my breaks. Hello, Paris. And so you can click on this, and it actually comes up. We don't do video, embedded video, but you can link to it. I know a lot of people do that. And you can, and there's all sorts of things that you can do with KML. I could do a whole nother tech talk just on KML. If you want to learn some more stuff about KML, you should go to earth.google.com/KML. It has KML tutorials and new things you can do with KMLs. I will go into some cool layers and things that I see. But this is really neat because all of a sudden you don't just have what Google is sending you, but you can start to make your own stories. You can, people use this, as I said, like people put all their vacation photos into, like, say this is where I went and this was the Eiffel Tower, and then all of a sudden you can also, you can make whole KMLs to start, as an educational program. Teachers are getting into this. We actually have Google for Educators is, let's see. Google for Educators has a whole thing on Google Earth and things that teachers can do with it. So it's sort of, all of a sudden it puts the power of Google Earth into your hands, and you can start doing whatever you want with it. Let's see. All right. Yeah, and actually a lot of, I mean, people are using this for all sorts of things. So let's see, maybe I'll go more into the layers, because what's neat about the layers, and they're kind of near and dear to my heart because this is what I work on, so you'll have to excuse me. But I feel like they really just, I don't know, imagery is fantastic, but if you don't have the layers to tell you what you're looking at, it loses a lot of the meaning. And so what's great about the layers is it tells you what you're looking at, and you can appreciate the imagery much more. So in addition, I sort of see the layers as a base map for you to sort of puts the base layers there, and then you can add everything else on top. Two things in here that I don't see quite as much as base layers as you'd think, restaurants and populated places, borders, streets. We do some special things that most people wouldn't know or wouldn't think of right away, and that's this Google Earth community layer and the featured content. And the Google Earth community is actually a website that hosts your KMLs for you, and that's bbs.keyhole.com. Keyhole is the old name for Google Earth. So this is, the BBS has been around for a very long time, and it's gotten some really great content. So what happens is people create content, and then you can actually, when you create something, you can right-click and you can say share or post, and it'll actually open up. I'll just pop this out. It'll open up this this posting wizard, and you can say continue. It asks you to make sure that somebody hasn't already posted this. You say yes. Assuming you actually made sure that this wasn't posted already. I'm sure 10,000 people have tried to post the Eiffel Tower, so maybe that's not a good idea. But and then you can put it into a forum, and it'll actually get uploaded to the BBS. So let me just take you to the actual BBS. Let's see. What's fantastic about this is that we actually then go and we scrape this and we put this data into Google Earth. We actually host this data. So you don't have to worry about having a lot of bandwidth to host these larger KMLs. You can just put them here under, for instance, environment or conservation or just Earth browsing, and we'll put them back in here. Let me turn off the roads so you can see. This is probably going to explode because there's a lot of things in Paris. So, for instance, you can click on this and you can see something about these posts. And it's really neat because you get content in places you just wouldn't have. I mean, Paris, we have roads and restaurants and things for, but for instance, in Baghdad, we don't have any of this data yet. But people have already, people are from Baghdad, people know this area, and people have already started annotating all sorts of places. I mean, Siberia is annotated. I think that one of the railroads is. And what's really neat about this is you actually start getting, right? You start getting the local languages in these areas. And I find this completely fascinating. And actually, this post I really like because I think this person is saying that she's just so excited that that she can see she can see Baghdad on Google Earth, and she's just annotating it like crazy. So we get all sorts of content that you look at something, some image that looks a little bit funny. I guarantee you somebody has put a little post that says, "What's this?" or somebody has said, "Oh, this is a military base, and this is its extended history." It's really fascinating what people have found and want to share with others. So that's definitely something that is worth exploring. So you can see actually, this is actually, a lot of people also don't know that you can open up the layers, that we actually have folders in them. They do work. We try to make them work so that you can just turn them on and off on the top level, but you can actually open them up. And for instance, so for the Google Earth layer, we have all the different forums in here. So if you put your information maybe in travel information, it would go into this one specific folder, and then you can look at just this one, which isn't in this very, very narrow scope of it. Here's one, right? And so you have a more specific search in a way. So one other thing that So that's the Google Earth community layer. You can spend hours on it. You can find some really cool things. Another thing that I really love is the featured content layer. And this is something that's relatively new. I think we launched it a few months ago. But this is sort of, because people are actually making some really ambitious KMLs. And some really fantastic organizations are, especially a lot of nonprofits, right? Because Google Earth is free, which is kind of unusual in the GI. So in the mapping world, nothing is free. I mean, a lot of other programs you pay thousands of dollars to get access for, and so for nonprofits, the fact that this is free, you have this great tool that you can start putting content in. You just need people to maybe take GPS units, and I mean, we're getting all sorts of people in all parts of the world are doing this. I think I just read an article about. Natives in the Amazon are being given GPS units, and they're mapping out where their tribal heritage locations are. So where they go, what an archaeologist and anthropologists and all sorts of scientists and explorers of all sorts are getting really excited about this. And actually, in that case, it's really nice because you're empowering people. That just knowledge is empowering, and so the fact that that's what Google's all about, right? The democratization of information, and so that to me is particularly exciting. So these are some really great, fantastic. I mean, I could spend hours on just one of these. Maybe a few that I'd really like. Oh yeah.
Do you deal somehow with spamming, malicious use? One can put, something really offensive with comments and stuff and share it, and now we, through Google Earth, give it to everybody. And people forget it that somebody else posted things and kind of, attributed to Google. Do we have any kind of filtering, supervising?
Yeah, so
sort of these things?
The featured content is hand-selected by the data team. So this has been gone through, and it's kind of special in a way. But for instance, the Google Earth layer, right? I mean, anybody could post anything, right? And that's something we take very seriously. We have a great group of moderators for the BBS. And they spend a lot of time, going through the content, taking things away that are obscene. It sort of works like Wikipedia in a way, right? Where the moderators really care, the community really cares about this content, and then it's sort of they go through it and they try to filter out what's bad. I don't actually know. But I've met some of them, and they're fantastic. I can put you in touch with a few if you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people care very much about this, and some people have been doing this for many years. So people of all ages too. Little kids and the older retired folks, and it's really exciting.
So people can upload by default, or they have to apply for a membership.
I think you have to be a member.
Is it controlled by the BBS controller?
Membership or posting?
Yeah, membership or all posting.
I think anybody can become. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah.
Jessica?
Yes. Hello.
This is Crystal. I have a question.
Oh, hey, Crystal.
Hey, could you repeat the questions here so we can hear them and not mute?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. So the question was if anybody can post to the BBS, what is Google going to get in trouble for posting this content, for allowing this content to get through? And the other question was if you had to become a member to post anything, and if this was moderated. And so we do, I think anybody can become a member. I'm sure if you abuse that, I'm sure the moderators have means. I don't know too much about it, but I know that we have moderators that really do go through all of our content as quickly as possible, because it is a pretty big website, and we have a lot of users. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, so the featured content is some even more ambitious. In Google Earth content, you can put, I think maybe 2 place marks, 1 place mark, and upload this. And and it gets put on there. I think these are a lot more comprehensive. There are many place marks with sort of our favorite, not favorites, some of the most ambitious, more ambitious. Just has more. It's more refined than just me at home that put on 1 or 2 place marks. So one thing I'd like to show. Let's see. Well, so you actually see that we have put in some new content, and we've put this little label of new on there so that it's new. We didn't put it on top of featured content because it should always be updating. So you just see updated, and wouldn't really see anything new. But let's see. Well, let me see. Go with. So because. Let's see. So it's really neat too because these are from authoritative organizations. It's good data that we know. It's not just with anybody being able to put any sort of information on. You don't know the accuracy of it or the how truthful it is. And one layer that I was really excited about seeing was we actually got the National Park Service to work with us, and they created place marks for all of the national parks. If we actually zoom in, maybe, let's see, where's Yellowstone? Here's Yellowstone. Oops. So you can see it opens up, it has a photo, it has links to the park websites. You can search web images news for Google, and it gives copyright information, or they don't think of copyright, but it just gives attribution. If we zoom in, let's see. So you can actually see the park boundaries, and they have all the visitor centers located. I think if you zoom in even further, there are campsites and all the facilities. And these red things here are actually the trails. So they have all the trails, all the national park trails in Google Earth, which is pretty fantastic. So this is data from the national parks.
Jennifer, is that kind of information available in non-US?
So is that information available in non-US? Do you mean in other languages, or do you mean in other
places like Japan, Europe, Russia?
Mm-hmm. So the U.S. National Parks is right now we have this information only in the U.S. But for instance, the UNEP is actually a really good example of. This is the UN Environmental Program. And these are fantastic because they have before and after photos, satellite imagery for places all over the world. So you can see, for instance, here, this is the clear cutting in the Amazon. So you can see this is I think in 1960. And, well, actually I can click on it and this will load in my places over here. And it'll zoom in, and this is another type of, so there are several types of KML maps. KML is just, it's what we call the Google Earth map. KML stands for Keyhole Markup Language. And so there are many types of this type of mapping. One I showed you before was just the place mark. You can also do a path, right, a line. So you can draw a line, and you can change the color and the width. So there are plenty of little things that you can do to stylize it. You can create polygons, right? You can, and then the other thing you can do is create image overlays. Like this one. So you can take any image. I actually saw a fantastic KML where somebody took an image of an ant and had it attacking Georgia, which is just really cute, So this is an image where they took a satellite photo of this area and put it on the Earth. And you can actually see that if we take this one, not this one away, you can see what it's become. So this one here, I think down here it says it's from June of 1975, and this one is of September 2001. And it's sort of neat because there are some other features that are sort of hidden, but you can actually slide this over and watch it disappear, right? So we're going to bring it back. And they have these for all over the world. I think they have the snows of Kilimanjaro disappearing.
But for example, here we are in Brazil. Are there parks in Brazil that you can layer on this?
Oops. We don't currently show parks. The question is if we have parks in Brazil. We don't currently show parks in Brazil in our featured content, but that doesn't mean that there isn't, the Brazil National Park Service. They could totally make a KML like this, and they could host it from their website. They could have Google BBS host it. They can definitely, and a lot of organizations are choosing to do that so that they can get their information out.
Okay.
So yeah, and I'm just going to delete these. You see the place mark is here. So there's, I should probably get more into, there's some really neat things that you can do with KML that are even more advanced than what I've just showed you. Some of the main things is that you can, we just released a feature that'll let you see time. It'll show time. Another thing, well, let me show an example of that actually. So there were actually, let me turn this off. There were a group of German students that were, I think, studying in Singapore that decided to put a GPS unit on to track a whale shark in the Indian Ocean. And I think they did this summer of 2005. And recently, when we came out with the time feature, they put the time stamps on, they reworked their KML, they reworked their map so that you could actually use this time feature. So you'll notice that if you're on if I click on a KML that can use time, this little time bar will show up here. And I can, if I click on the little watch, it'll give me properties. So for instance, I can make the animation move faster or slower, and I can do some other things. Maybe I should just show you what it looks like if I leave it as is. So if I can actually play it, you can see the little whale shark going, big whale shark, making his way across the Indian Ocean. And so this is, I think, a line that they drew of his path. Each of these dots is a GPS unit that they took during a day, and then they have the time and day with each of the each of these dots. And so with that information, they can show an animation of this whale shark making his way across the Indian Ocean.
So this is about the KMLs only, right? The map doesn't change.
Right, the map doesn't change. This is just the KML information on top. And actually, I can remove the KML, and the map is still the same underneath.
So I cannot see a place changing over time.
The question is whether or not you can see a place changing over time. You can if you trick. I mean, Google will still host the same data, but you can put whatever you want on top of it. So you can put an image of how an area looked 30 years ago, how an area looked 20 years ago, how an area looked 10 years ago, and you can change it like that.
But they're not available on the website.
They are not, right, so they would not be available through the streaming version here. They'd only be available, so if you create a map a lot of people ask, if I make a place mark, can everybody see it? And nobody can see it but you and the people that you send it to. Yeah, okay. All right. So in addition to time, you also have, and all of these things, all of the special things you can do with KML, you can all find those in the KML tutorials, earth.google.com/KML. So I won't spend too much time going into it. I will say that if you save these, so if you go right-click and you save as, it'll save it as a KML or KMZ. The KMZ is a zipped KML. And it'll just save it, wherever you want to save it. You send that one file to a friend. They double-click it. They open it. They can see it in their Google Earth if they have Google Earth downloaded. If it's a KML and not a KMZ, you can read that KML in a text editor. So you actually see it almost looks like like an HTML or XML code. So you can change things either in Google Earth, or you can change things in a text editor as well if you'd prefer that. So what's really neat is you can download KMLs from the BBS, see what other people have done, and then you can crawl around in the code, and then you can copy that and do the same thing. So one other thing that people have done is real-time networked KMLs. So let me go over back to New York. There's this group called FBOweb.com. They do tracking of air flights, and they actually made a network KML, real-time network KML of all the incoming and outgoing flights for, I think, LAX and JFK and all these. And so I'll turn this on, and so you can actually see these are all the flights currently in the air coming in and out of JFK. And I can click on any one of these, and it says this is an SFO to JFK. This is San Francisco to JFK flight. It's flying at 31,000. I guess this is feet at this speed. What's really neat too is that they have put this into. They actually have the altitude, right? So you can see how high above the ground they are. See if I can zoom in, come a little closer.
This is in featured contest?
This is just something that anybody can download. This is in, you can see this is in the Places folder. So if you download this file and if you open it, what's neat is you can see this little folder, and it's green now. But if it's thinking, it'll go yellow, and then it'll go green because it's actually streaming the data from a database somewhere on the internet, and it's giving you these, and you can actually see it just moved, right? So you can set it, so maybe every 5 seconds this looks and sees, is there any new data? Yes, okay, well so this one is moved there. Google is not hosting this. Google will host the KML file, but if you have data that's changing on the back end, you have to host it somewhere. We don't have a Google solution for that yet. Yes?
Where are they getting the data from?
I don't know where this company, the question is where they're getting the data from. I don't know where this company is getting this data from. I think, I don't know, the US Air Force. I don't.
The FAA. You can pull this from the FAA
right.
website.
Okay, so the answer is the FAA website. And this company just put it into a KML file. Is there another question? No? All right, so this is an example of real-time networked KML, which is really pretty neat.
There's a couple of travel websites that will actually use this interface to let you track your flight, or your wife's flight, or your brother's flight, or whatever.
So you can, yeah.
Yeah, and you can do all the stuff you said. You can get the whole 3D image and see them coming down.
Right, so you can actually also get a particular flight if you want to see just one flight.
So you mean dynamic, does that mean the data are generated dynamically, or it's just an existing file?
If the data is created dynamically?
Right.
By the KML or on the back end in the database? Oh, I guess it would depend on how you do it.
For this case, they do.
Sorry?
For this case, they do generate dynamic.
Right.
Right. Okay.
So, all right, and then there are two other things I want to touch on with KMLs as well. One is, I don't know how many of you have heard of Sketchup. It's this fantastic 3D modeling program. It's really easy to use. I think my mom was using it to redo her kitchen, you know, dream kitchen, which is fantastic. I love the fact that my mom can use this
That's always a
easily.
measure if it's easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Moms can use it, right?
Although my mom's a bit more tech savvy, I guess. But yeah, so 3D buildings, 3D, you know, you can do some really great things in SketchUp. But then you can also, now that you know we have the SketchUp Google integration, you can actually whatever model you create in Google SketchUp, you can then put onto the Earth in Google Earth. And not only can you put it on the Earth in Google Earth and then make a KML out of that, you can share that model on the 3D warehouse, which is SketchUp website where people upload their models. They can upload a model they just made in SketchUp, or they can upload a model they put on the Earth, and then you can open it either in SketchUp or in Google Earth. So I'll just show a few examples of that. Let's see. So we'll go to the 3D warehouse. This is the 3D warehouse. It's just sketchup.google.com, which is where you go to download the SketchUp. It's free. And then sketchup.google.com/3D warehouse. And so if we'll do we're in New York now, so we can do a search for New York City. And you can see that the new World Trade Center is one that I happened to see. I thought that was sort of neat. And so this is, it actually shows the photo of the model. And because this model is not only in Google SketchUp, but it's also been placed in Google Earth, it shows you a map, Google Map mashup, of where it is on Earth. So you know, hey, this isn't a model in Ohio or something. This is the one in New York City. And it'll be rated, and you can, usually there's a description. People will tag a model, so that's how we search for it, right? So I think, right, World Trade Center, New York City is probably in here as well. So, and then a description of what it is, and it'll say how complex the model is. What's really neat about this, you'll see it says download to Google SketchUp, so maybe you can alter the model and add a whole bunch of things, re-upload it, or people put chairs, chair in, and you put a chair into your model, or you put people in your models, and that's sort of neat. You can view it in Google Earth, and if it says you can view it in Google Earth 4, I mean, you can view anything in Google Earth 4, but specifically in Google Earth 4, Google Earth 4, the beta version, has an ability to see texturized SketchUp models. So a regular model, this would just be, it'll be gray like our 3D models. It'll be blue. You can make it a color, but it's not going to have textures. And what it might be textures is that you can take a photo of the side of this building and put that texture onto it. And that's what you see here. That's why it looks so photorealistic, is because it's really photorealistic. It's very simple polygons, but it looks really complex because you put an image on top. And you need Google Earth 4 to see that. So you can say open in Google Earth 4, and I've already done that and preloaded it because it's a little faster. And so you can actually see us zooming in here. So, and that's what it looks like in the 3D model in Google Earth. And you can actually see this is, right, the financial center is over here. And it's all in 3D. So it's just pretty neat. I think it's kind of cool. You see the shadows of the other buildings in here. You can zoom up pretty close. You can't really get quite as close as you could if you were in Google SketchUp, but you can get pretty close. You can go inside. So that's sort of neat. Let's see. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about with the special cases of KML is something our most recent, I think, release of KML, which is regionated KML. Basically, if you have an image that you put on top of Google Earth, if it's very simple, it works fine. But if you get a huge, very high-res, satellite image that you want to put on top of Google Earth, well, then it gets a little bit more complicated. It slows it down a little bit more. It's not really the right, solution if you have a very big file. But so what we've done is we've regionated the file so it actually it zooms in a little bit more. It loads it a little bit more like we load our own imagery. So what I want to show here is one of our latest featured. We actually have taken a KML like this and put this into our featured content, which is our historical maps here. So Rumsey's historical maps are, I believe they're the largest private collection of historical maps. They're just absolutely beautiful. And Rumsey historical maps. So we can open these up, and you can see we just have an indicator. So these are all the different maps. Oops, here. We have a little map finder so you can find where they are. So for instance, we have one of New York City in 1836. We have one of the world in 1790. I'll actually go to the New York City one because I like to do that. So you have to find it in here. So it says New York 1836. And you can just double click it and it'll zoom you in. This doesn't work for all KMLs or all of the folders in the streamed layers. It's only if you set it. So for some of these, they're set. If we zoom in, you actually see, I think up here is Central Park, right?
A little rugged.
Right? So it'll load, but yeah, it's pretty neat. So you can actually see what a lot of these cities, or I think we have, the lower western half or eastern half of Australia, and I think there's at least one map for every continent except Antarctica. But this is just, they're really beautiful maps, and you can spend hours with them, and so you can see this is just sort of neat. So this is an example where it's sort of more fuzzy when you zoom in, and as you more fuzzy when you zoom out, and when you zoom in, it kind of comes into it loads it a little, more piecemeal, and it handles it much better. So you can actually host a much bigger or send a much bigger KML than you would otherwise. So, okay. All right, so I think that's most of what I wanted to cover. I will also mention that Google Earth is also available in French, Italian, German, Spanish, and Japanese. You can actually change that by going to, there are a lot of things you can do actually if you go to Tools and Options. There are all sorts of things people don't even, if you don't care, you can just leave it, right? But you can, for instance, make the terrain much more steep. If you can't quite see the hill, you had to walk uphill both ways in the snow as a kid, you can put it on 3 and it looks actually much steeper. I like maybe 1.5. 1 is just the average. You can always reset to default. You can clear your cache. You can have it store more cache. You can change the touring and the navigation speed. And so in general, the language settings, you can actually change it to any one of these languages. And I think you have to close out of the program and reopen it to get it to load in that language, which is pretty neat. Getting to see everything in Japanese is sort of fun. Yes?
I'm wondering about GIS style analysis things, like the area of a region, and whether those are supported in the other more professional, Earth Explorer, the
Okay.
Earth professionals.
So the question is more advanced GIS analysis uses of Google Earth. Is that correct? People are definitely using Google Earth for GIS use. So one other thing that if you get the Google Plus version. A lot of people don't know what the difference between Plus and regular. You see all the same data in Google Earth Regular, Google Earth Plus, Google Earth Pro. The difference with Google Earth Plus is you get to import GPS points, a little bit better printing. Google Earth Pro is much better printing, much better screenshots. There's also a movie making module, which is, I know a lot of real estate agents are really excited about that because they can send a little video of the, make a 3D SketchUp model of the building you want to sell, and you make a little zoom around, send that off. There's also a GIS importer, takes in shape files, CSV files, which is really fantastic. You just throw it in. I mean, it doesn't take huge. I mean, I kind of push it every once in a while. It doesn't take huge files, but you can take moderate-sized files. So you can import GIS data. It doesn't do as nearly as advanced analysis as, for instance, I don't know if you're familiar with like ESRI tools, or sure, all these things are MapInfo, really great programs, and they're more of the real hard analysis. If you want to get into very specific scientific, but people are using Google Earth for, all sorts of even just visual context. But we definitely have scientists using Google Earth.
It looks like there's a ruler up there.
Oh yeah, so I actually specifically found one of my favorite photos. This is in Africa. We have, I think, over a few hundred very, very, very high-res photos in Africa taken by airplane by Michael Fay. And so this is one of my favorites. It's of seals. This is very high-res. So I love going into seals with the kids, right? And seeing how long the seals are. Right, this ruler is a measuring tool, and so you can see, probably miles is not the right, maybe we'll go to meters. You can see how long one of the seals are, right? So this seal is about 2 meters, or let's go to feet for our. It's about a little over 6 feet. It's kind of a big seal. It's bigger than me, right? So that's what the tool is for. I don't know how absolutely precisely accurate it is, right? And a lot of the imagery has imperfections. You need to kind of skew it to get the right projection. So if you're doing very, very, very specific high-level science, it's not quite as precise as a lot of scientists would like, but it's definitely usable, and people definitely, it's just GIS, just spatial. Understanding the data spatially, you start to notice things you don't notice at all, you didn't notice before. So actually, for instance, with the whale shark, whose name, by the way, is Schroeder. They named the whale shark Schroeder, which I think is fantastic. You'll actually notice that Schroeder kind of, he's going this way, and all of a sudden here, it's just like a 180-degree turn, and he starts going this way. And somebody took this, and they put you can't really quite see it here, they looked at the ocean currents, and then they noticed that the ocean currents were going this way down in the southern hemisphere, and the northern hemisphere was actually going more this way. So they speculated that perhaps what happened was that all the plankton or little fish that the whale shark might be eating was probably getting funneled into this path right here. And so that the whale shark was probably just following his food, because here the currents are going this way, and just here they actually start turning. And so that's something that they wouldn't have noticed before from just looking at a bunch of numbers or maybe a graph, that you really needed some more spatial context to understand. So definitely, people are definitely using this for scientific research and understanding, a little less so for hard analysis, but people are finding ways, so, Yes, question?
Are there plans to improve the resolution uniformly in terms of the Earth, especially even in the United States by about 100 miles from the Earth, just because we're watching?
So plans to improve the resolution. I would say Google's mission is to collect the world's information and make it universally accessible, right? So definitely. I mean, we are always looking for data. If you have any, let us know. We vectored, so the layers data and the imagery data, we're constantly pushing out data. We're constantly processing data. We're getting data from all places. It's pretty fantastic. I think we have a third of the world's population covered with high-res, imagery. So a third of the people in the world can say, hey, that's my house. if you find
Better resolution.
if you find better resolution imagery, you can email me, or I can put you in contact with a few of our data acquisition people. Yeah. So I think that's. Oh, the one other thing I wanted to say is that Google Earth is available in Mac, PC, Linux. I think. Oh, and the fact. One of just talking about what people use Google Earth for, because people definitely are using Google Earth to find their house and to show their kids where the Pacific Ocean is, because people still have geography is still slow in coming. But so I've heard of people using this for urban and town planning. Especially with the Sketchup models, people are, planning out where their town is, trying to do smart planning. People are doing this for education. People are using this for disaster response and awareness. So for instance, with Hurricane Katrina, this is another thing I have loaded. I forget who I think we worked with the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, to get their imagery out. We just hosted a whole bunch of data. This is one example where they did assessment of the damage. They also had Red Cross stations and a whole bunch of other things. Let's see if I have that website up. No, okay. People are using this for environmental activism. This is the Sierra Club. They made a KML of the ANWR Alaska drilling. So just to show, just to visually, so you could understand what was going on. People are using this for just local activism as well. A friend of mine had in Arizona, there's the Union Pacific Railroad wanted to build a switchyard on top of his father's farm, which actually also happened to be extremely close to an Arizona mountain and state park. And so he created a Google Earth model, showed that at the town committee planning meeting, and they ended up voting 5-3 in his favor. So very, very close. And he really, I think he told me afterwards, he felt that without the Google Earth model, nobody would have understood what they were talking about, because the Union Pacific guys had come with these maps that nobody really understood. I think they didn't even bring the maps to the meeting. They had brought maps to other meetings. And so nobody really understood what they were talking about. And he put in the Google Earth overlay, showed where the switchyard was going to be, how big it was going to be using the measuring tool, how close it was going to be to the park, where the trails were with the park, and how you could see the whole switchyard if you were standing on top of the mountain. And it really made people understand what was happening in a way that wouldn't have otherwise. So these are just some examples of what people are using for. People are using it for just showing their vacation photos to friends too. So there are all sorts of things that you can do with it, and you can share these on the BBS, and things are happening. So maybe I'll take a few questions from here in the Mountain View. I know the Mountain View office hasn't really had a chance to weigh in. So question?
Yes, you showed how you go from Google Earth to Maps.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go the other direction?
I should talk about the maps people. Not from the maps, not from maps.google.com. I know that the KMLs that you make in Google Earth, if you have them hosted online, you can put the URL into the address in where you would put Paris. You would just put the URL to load, and you can actually see the KML in Google Maps. I think not all KMLs, like Sketchup models, I don't think work, but a lot of them. Right now, I don't think that they have any plugins back into Google Earth, but I'm sure that's something we should look into. We do have a lot of, this website has a link back into Google Earth, and maybe, so they have, I think, here you see the whole thing. This is their Google Earth file that they're hosting, so you can open Google Earth with this. I know Wikipedia, if you have.
It's very doable, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And it's happening, just not in Google Maps yet. So how do we talk to the Mountain View people? All right, Mountain View people, do you guys want to say anything? Ask any questions? Yeah, hi.
I don't think we have any questions here.
Okay.